The moon isn't what you think it is. It's bigger, older, and lighter in mass than it should be. Now, I recently posted a video about the ancient Greeks of the Peloponnese. Before there was a moon, the Proserpines of ancient Greek. That's what they were describing. They were living before the moon was around, and before the great flood of Noah and the Phaleron of ancient Greece. We've had many earth changes and many floods on the earth, but they have left a record of them being alive and around before there was a moon. Now we know that before the great flood, the deluge of the time of Noah, there was no, for example, rainbow. So something had changed, definitely. We've had huge earth changes. The sun was not the same. There was no rainbow, which means that the atmosphere was different. And something caused a change in the sun, or maybe there are theories that Saturn was we had a binary star system, and that Saturn, we were closer to Saturn, and that Saturn was our original sun, which was a little bit cooler and smaller than our sun that we have now. And something happened that we had a walkabout of the planets of our solar system, that even Mars supposedly was struck and changed and lost its atmosphere. And there were great upheavals and catastrophes. And Mars, meaning, of course, Ares, meaning the god of war, something happened to Mars. Anyway, we know from the Old Testament there was a huge earth change and a huge atmosphere change. And that caused, of course, the sun being different and then the rainbow coming about, because there were no rainbows before that. Now, what about the moon? And what about the fact that the craters are all very shallow? There's a lot of questions to be raised here. This is by Humans Are Free, and the moon is not what you think it is, bigger, older, lighter in mass than what it should be. There's an embedded video here by David Icke talking about this. It's about an hour or so long. It's very interesting. And we know that Immanuel Velikovsky, there's a lot of people that agree with his theories lately, that Saturn was our sun, and that something happened. There was a huge upheaval in our solar system, and that was before Saturn had rings, and now Saturn had rings, and they even said that there are ring makers around Saturn creating those rings. Anyway, each night we know that the moon makes its appearance, and today we have a full moon. Now, without this luminous sphere, our planet would be a vastly different place. It's responsible for the ocean's tides, the seasons, temperatures, and Earth's varied rotation. Both humans and animals are affected by the moon's presence, and scientists have theories about the planetary orbit's origins, yet all remains mere speculation. Some researchers disagree with current hypothesis and have proposed an intriguing conclusion. They argue the moon is an artificial satellite placed into orbit by advanced somebody advanced. Let's call them extraterrestrials. Now, the moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, and much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit, and it's also extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. This is by Alan Butler, and he says, this is what he said in Who Built the Moon? Lunar lore throughout history. Well, one of them, as we said, were the Proserpines, the people that lived there before in ancient Greece and the Peloponnese before there was a moon. So, lunar lore throughout history. While the notion that the moon is a synthetic celestial body may seem unimaginable, but it's been discussed for thousands of years. Our ancient ancestors, who had no contact with one another, all shared matching stories about time before the moon. Greek philosophers, Aristotle and Plutarch, reference an age where the astronomical glowing orb did not exist. In Africa, the Zulu legend chronicle how the planetoid, the moon, was similar to an egg with its yolk removed. Tribespeople believed this hollow heavenly lantern was brought here by advanced alien beings. Indigenous Colombians also recounted a pre-lunar civilization in their writings. These diverse groups lament that when the transcendental shining ball arrived, a terrible cataclysm unfolded, nearly eradicating humanity entirely. Earth's population was supposedly reduced to a single race. Modern science has ascertained that human beings share one common ancestor, mitochondrial Eve. Might it be plausible ancient fables may in fact be knowledge of events long forgotten? It rang like a bell, and strange sounds emitting. Prior to mankind's historic cosmic ventures, Apollo 10 traveled to the dark side of the moon. During radio transcripts, the astronauts speak of hearing eerie outer space music, quote unquote. Eerie outer space music. Bizarre electromagnetic tones similar to the frequencies recorded inside Saturn's rings were clearly audible. A dreadful otherworldly orchestra encompassed the ears of every voyaging passenger. NASA affiliates quickly dismissed the acoustic oddity and blamed radio waves interfering with the satellite's magnetic field. However, their argument is not applicable as the planetary body does not possess a magnetic field. So where were these radio waves coming from? Now, Apollo 12 infamously landed on the moon November of 1969, and its force produced an artificial earthquake. Seismic devices registered the impact, which covered a 40-mile range. Astonishingly, the object rang like a bell, the moon that is, for over 35 minutes. Officials from NASA were greatly intrigued by this auditory phenomenon, and on the following mission, executive personnel decided to send a heavier rocket and document the results. Apollo 13 was deployed, and its module struck with the equivalence of 11 tons of TNT. For 3 hours, the moon reverberated with sounds similar to a massive gong. Such noises would be physically impossible for a solid mass to produce. Identical crater depths and unnatural metallurgic composition. Earth's ever-revolving companion, the moon, is laden with millions of craters in varying diameters. Size and force of impact dictate how large or small the cavity will be. With such a broad range in breadth, one would expect to see varying depths. Perplexingly, all holes measure an identical distance downwards at precisely 4 feet, only 4 feet down. It's as if a protective metallic barrier is shielding the globe's interior. Another chilling factor is the moon's chemical composition. Cosmonauts, that is the Russians, attempted to drill into several craters but could barely penetrate the surface. After multiple failed boring attempts, metallurgists performed extensive tests to lunar materials. These results led to a startling conclusion. The elements were not naturally occurring. Brass, titanium, and mica comprise the celestial sphere, compounds often utilized in architectural design. Structures on the moon, on the surface. On November 23, 1966, a manned orbiter took photographs of the lunar surface. Shockingly, 6 enormous megalithic structures were captured on the film. It was a groundbreaking discovery which made the front pages of newspapers, including the LA Times and Washington Post. The monoliths appeared incredible in their geometric precision and could not be formed naturally. Analysis performed by NASA researchers estimated the towers could be taller than skyscrapers found on Earth. Russian space engineer Alexander Abramov studied these perplexing images and noted the spires' arrangement accurately matched Egypt's Great Pyramids. NASA claims these architectural anomalies were merely an optical illusion and publicly declined further investigation. Nevertheless, years later, Apollo 17 again obtained shots of these peculiar right-angled constructs. For decades, poor quality images of the glowing crater-laden Sputnik mainly circulated. Things changed in 1994 after Jose Escamilla colorized black and white photos acquired from an orbiter, and with this alteration, previously indecipherable details became apparent. Through his minor edit, several colossal formations became distinctly visible. Moon's light mass. A particularly puzzling aspect of the strange space rock, our moon, is its incredibly light volume. Although the satellite is a quarter of Earth's 8,000-mile diameter, it only has 1.2% of the mass. 4 moons should theoretically be equivalent to 1 Earth. In reality, it would take over 81 moons to produce our terrestrial world's total mass. 2 Russian scientists, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, found this fact more than unsettling. In 1970, they risked their entire careers after publishing an article in Sputnik magazine titled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" After years of examination, the men concluded that the moon was placed in orbit eons ago by sentient beings currently unknown to society. In their writings, they state, quote, "If higher life only developed on Earth because the moon is exactly what it is and where it is, it becomes irrational to cling to the idea that it is a natural object," end quote. And then we have mathematical components. Examine the geometrical and mathematical aspects of the moon, sun, and Earth. Brings forward incredibly startling revelations. Consequently, the numbers are so eerily precise that one begins to ponder, might it all occur by grand design as opposed to mere coincidence? For example, the sun is 400 times larger than the moon's diameter and 400 times further to Earth. For this reason, both bright heavenly spheres appear perfectly equal in size. Without this phenomenal anomaly, lunar and solar eclipses would be unattainable. Our planet rotates 366 times when orbiting the sun, while the sun is 366% of the moon's polar circumferences. I mean, how coincidental are these numbers? In 10,000 days, the moon orbits Earth 366 times. The moon's perimeter totals 1,920 kilometers, and there are 109.2 Earth diameters across the sun. When the planet is furthest from the sun, there are 109.2 sun diameters between our world and the fiery star. I mean, why are all these coincidences with these exact numbers? That's my comment. And going back to the article, the moon's polar circumference is the moon's polar circumference is 27.3% the size of Earth's polar circumference. Every 27.3 days, the moon will orbit the Earth and travel 1,092 kilometers at the equator every 27.3 days. I mean, look, these numbers are really, really something else. Somber demeanor of astronauts. Landing on the moon was one of humanity's most triumphant accomplishments. You would imagine that being the first man setting foot there would be a celebratory achievement. Yet when the astronauts returned to Earth, their demeanors were incredibly sober. During an interview, the group seemed uncomfortably tense. Each man is oddly hesitant and visibly uncomfortable. Some hypothesize it's because their entire worldview had just been drastically turned upside down. During Apollo's first mission, there are 2 minutes where the camera and radio feed disappeared completely. Neil Armstrong switched to the medical channel and exclaimed, "They're here! They're parked on the side of the crater! They're watching us!" Now, if you want to learn more about this synthetic satellite, check out Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. This source is from down the Chupacabra hole, and you can see them on Facebook. And this is on Humans Are Free, and this is Creative Commons. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.